What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Danny and Bush coming at you with another episode of Dynasty Decisions. I swear to God, we're not going to say this is our favorite episode to do because Danny says it literally every time we do one of these. But if you guys are curious, you want a submission to Dynasty Decisions to be featured on an episode, the easiest way you can do so, scrolling across the bottom of your screen, is our Patreon. That'll get you first access to being on Dynasty Decisions. We'll talk about your team first. And also, you can submit them to our Twitters, to us on Discord as well. If you want to join the Discord, in the description, it is totally free to do so. You can submit your, questions, your trades, your, rebuilding, contending questions in there, and we'll get to them as soon as we can. We have a little bit of a pile up right now, so if you want to skip the line, like I said, Patreon's the easiest way to do so. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this video as well. We are almost at 9,000 subscribers right now. We're very, very close to that. So if you want to hit the subscribe button, if you haven't already done so, we greatly appreciate it. Danny, how are you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, I'm not going to give you the whole spiel about how I enjoy making this type of content, how I enjoy getting into your guys' shoes and helping you guys make these decisions for your dynasty rosters. All I'm basically going to say is I'm pumped. I'm ready to go, ready to take on these 10 teams as per usual. With that being said, before we hit that first team, as always, we're going to hit the intro. All right, so we're going to start off with the first team of the video, and we're going to start off, obviously, of course, with the Patreon teams. The first Patreon submission that we have is from our fabled Fletsky, a member of our Listener Dynasty League, and he's actually sending the team from the Listener Dynasty League because as a contender last year, he is faced with what I'm assuming many watching this video are going to be faced with: how to rebuild, how to recoup after the Tom Brady retirement. And you guys can see the state of this team. I mean, with aside from the quarterback position, I mean, you got Akers, you got Eckler, you got Kamara, Diggs, Allen, Evans. I mean, this is clearly a win now team. The only problem, of course, is because of Brady retiring, he has a big hole at the quarterback position to fill.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard for us to give non-biased advice because we're both in this league, and
Yeah.
I am also like a contender. Danny's more of like a rebuilder in this league, but so you'll have Wentz as a starting quarterback. I'm assuming Wentz will be a starting quarterback next year.
Yeah.
I'm not, in touch with Colts Twitter. If Brock wants to leave me some knowledge down below, I'm assuming they're gonna stick with Wentz next year just because they gave up a first round pick to get him. Jameis Winston, I expect to be a starter at some point. I don't know when he's going to be back from his ACL tear, whether it's, week 1 or whatever the case is. Maybe he's on the PUP list or something, but at minimum, you only have like one mediocre starting quarterback. Maybe you have another one. So you definitely need to address the quarterback position. You obviously do not have a first round pick or a second round pick to do so in this draft. So that, rules out, Howell and Willis and Corral and Pickett and those guys. If you wanted to, you could probably sell one of these pieces to try and recoup a first round pick to address the quarterback position in this draft class, or you could use it to address the quarterback position via trade as well. Go after, Zach Wilson, obviously spicy hot, not going to be too willing to give him up because I have offered him many times for Zach Wilson. Or you could go after, I have Ryan Tannehill. If you want to come after him, I'd definitely be willing to trade him.
And as you know, with our ongoing negotiations, I mean, I have quarterbacks out of the wazoo, picks out of the wazoo. So if you want to make another offer for them, I'm always open ears for that. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, obviously, the main pieces that you'd probably want to move to get your quarterback situation, what kind of jumps out to you, Corey?
It's tough because there's a number of guys on his team that you're going to need to win, right? Like, so you don't want to sell Diggs. You don't want to sell Allen. You don't want to sell Evans because those guys are going to help you towards, winning the championship. So if you wanted to take like, your 2023 first and go after a quarterback, maybe you package like a Ramondre Stevenson in there and you go after, maybe like a Russell Wilson type or something like that. Somebody that's, in their prime, not a young asset to a team that might, be looking towards the future. I think that could be a move that makes sense for the state of your team, obviously, because at this point, it doesn't really make sense to tear this whole thing down because you just have too many pieces in place that can help you win. All you're really needing is a quarterback, and you could always go for a cheap replacement too. Let's say, Mason Rudolph is the starter in Pittsburgh or something like that. I suppose you could send a third round pick to somebody and start Mason Rudolph as like your second or third quarterback until Winston comes back from his injury. Or, if Ryan Fitzpatrick gets another starting job somewhere, maybe you do something like that. But yeah, you're kind of in a tough spot with Tom Brady retiring. I expected him to play one more year. I'm assuming most people did as well. So that is definitely a brutal situation to be in with a win now team and Tom Brady.
Yeah, and I mean the last thing I'll quickly say too is you see those 2023 picks, somebody, I'm not going to mention who in your league would be interested in that 2023 first and has quarterback assets to give. So
Oh God.
feel free to slide through with that. But yeah, and all jokes aside, though, I mean, clearly this team is in a win now. You just have to get that quarterback 1-2, depending on obviously what Wentz and Winston are ending up doing going into 2022. Aside from that, I mean, your running back core, your wide receiver core, obviously with Kittle, I mean, you have the makings to win. You just really need to figure out the quarterback spot. But yeah, either way, any closing thoughts, or should we move on to Gavin?
No, we can move on to Gavin's team. Shout out to Gavin, another Patreon as well.
Yep.
Just thoughts in general on the team. Looking at his team, it's pretty clear what stands out. That he has pretty much no running backs. Obviously,
Yeah.
he has only one quarterback that's worth a damn in Trey Lance, and he has a couple foundational wide receivers. Obviously, the Dynasty tight end one in Kyle Pitts. So this is clearly one of those teams that you want to just rebuild through the draft. You clearly want to rebuild slowly and take your time, because could you shove your chips to the middle a year early? Probably, but you're going to be, at a position where maybe you're lacking some depth, or your team isn't quite to the level that it could be if you take your time with this. So come the 2023 NFL season, this is probably when you can start to think about competing. This year, I mean, you don't have your first round pick. I'm assuming you tore this down mid-season or something like that, because you realized, my first round pick is going to be high and I'm not going to be able to reap the benefits of that. I'm stuck in a situation where I'm not going to be able to win. So maybe you sold some assets for 2023 picks. I'm not too sure exactly what happened, but you have 5 firsts in 2023 and 7 2s. So that is a lot of draft capital. It's a lot of assets that you can use to rebuild this team. You clearly have, 4 or 5 cornerstone players. And in the 2023 class, you should be aiming to target your running back position then, because we know that class is expected to be good. And not only that, but your wide receiver depth and stuff can be used, because we expect, another pretty good wide receiver class that year as well. So maybe you add one of those top end guys, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Kayshon Boutte, someone like that. And then in the second round, you fill out your depth at wide receiver, and hopefully you're able to get a quarterback with one of those first round picks as well.
Yeah, I mean, and you also have the 205 this year. Like, who knows? Like, if there's a big wide receiver run in your league and maybe a Tyler Algier falls to you at 205, I mean, I think that would be a good RB2-3 type to build around. Obviously, with the basis that the majority of that production is going to come from 2023. But at the end of the day here, 205, if there isn't a wide receiver run, I mean, if a David
You could
Bell
look to
falls
get
to
your
you,
QB3 this year too. If
that would
let's
work
say if
too.
Sam Howell goes like 25th overall in the NFL draft, so not like the greatest draft capital in the world, so he falls to 205, that would make a ton of sense, knowing that you're going to get your Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, whatever quarterback you're going to hitch yourself to as your QB2 behind Trey Lance in the 2023 class. So that to me makes a lot of sense as how you want to build this thing. This is, again, you just build this through the draft. You can continue to acquire picks if the opportunities present themselves. And also you can use some of these picks, come 2023 draft season, because if this class is indeed as good as we think it's going to be, not only are those ones going to be worth a lot, those twos are going to be worth a lot too. And you can just ship some of those pieces off maybe for, a year from now. If you can ship off a second round pick for Russell Wilson after like an injury plagued season, or, Matthew Stafford, to help push your chips to the middle, you could always do something like that as well.
Yeah, for sure. And again, like when looking at this team, I mean, it's clear to me, again, Corey mentioned it, but the nucleus here is fully intact. You got your building blocks. You got your Lance, Jefferson, AJB, and Pitts, which realistically, if we were to do a startup right now, would all find their way in the first 2 rounds. So, I mean, you got a plethora of top end talent. Using these next 2 drafts, including the 205 this year and all the picks you have next year, to just build around them. Like, I genuinely think by 2023, maybe 2024, once you even get more depth, I mean, this is going to be a team that can run the league, because there's no aging, depreciating assets really worth a lot on your team. Like, all of your top assets are 22, 23, 24 years old.
Yeah, the immediate move that stands out to me, like I said, is if you can try and use that 205 to get your QB3, whether it's
Yeah.
trading it for a QB3, or maybe you package it with Sutton or something. You take take Cortland Sutton and the 205 and go after Zach Wilson or something like that, and see if you can secure your QB3 behind Trey Lance and your QB2, which you're probably going to address in the 2023 class. So that's enough on Gavin's team. Again, you're set up for a good long haul rebuild, productive struggle, whatever you want to call it. We can move on to Wolverine's team. Kilgi, as he's known in the comments section. He is also a member of the Patreon. 110 in the rookie draft using this team. What would you do to improve this team, basically? So, again, there's immediate things that stand out to you. Obviously, he has a pretty good running back core with Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, James Conner. And then at wide receiver, you got two of the top, 8 to 10 dynasty wide receivers in Justin Jefferson and DK Metcalf. Also some decent depth with Judy and Tony. And I mean, some other young guys that could be worth something in trade packages and stuff that are definitely usable. And then you have two of the top, 5, 6 dynasty tight ends as well with Pitts and Hawkinson. So the immediate thing that stands out to me is your quarterback position. Obviously, we heard Aaron Rodgers in his MVP speech say something like, I'm going to, take my time or not take my time. I'm going to make a decision, but we don't exactly know what that decision is going to be. Is he going to retire? I doubt it. Is he going to, go to a new team? Is he going to stay with the Packers? We don't really know right now. If he does, in fact, stay with the Packers, that kind of kills your Jordan Love. And you just really have Tua and Rodgers as your starting quarterbacks at that point. With the 110 in the rookie draft, I am curious to see what kind of quarterback you can get with that pick. Because if you can get Matt Corral, if you can get,
Malik Willis.
Yeah, Kenny Pickett or I don't think you're going to get Malik Willis just based on all the hype we've heard out of him. I think he's going to go higher than 110. I think Corral, Pickett, and Howell are the guys that you're going to likely be looking at. We don't know what the draft capital is going to be for all those guys. I would say, gun to my head, that all three of the guys I just mentioned are going to be mid to late first round picks. But I have no idea. Maybe Sam Howell slips to the second round. Maybe Kenny Pickett's in the second round. Either way, you should be able to potentially address the quarterback position at that point. But obviously, if the value doesn't line up, Garrett Wilson falls to 110 or some shit, then you obviously just go with that option as well. I also don't hate the idea of addressing the quarterback position, similar to what I said with Gavin, taking the 110 and Rondell Moore or something and going after a quarterback that way.
Yeah, no, I fully agree here. Again, you're in obviously a good spot here with what we mentioned with Gavin. You have a ton of superstar talent at the running back, wide receiver, and tight end position. And obviously, if Rodgers is back, you have one superstar level quarterback. Again, the only thing here, as Corey mentioned, is getting that quarterback after Rodgers. I love Tua. He can be a quarterback 2 or 3 for you. You're fine there. The problem with that, though, is we haven't seen anything from Jordan Love to prove that he's even worth a damn in the NFL. And the pick that you're going to have at 110 there should have a top 3 type of quarterback in this draft there. Again, are you going to be forced into taking a quarterback if 3 or 4 quarterbacks go before your pick and, you're looking at Jamison Williams versus Carson Strong? No, don't force a quarterback pick. But again, if quarterback value is able to fall to you at the 110, feel free to take it. If you were to miss out on a quarterback, though, the one piece I would look to leverage is maybe seeing what Hawkinson can get you, because obviously with Kyle Pitts, you're pretty set at the tight end position. Maybe seeing if you can swing a deal for a quarterback too with Hawkinson. Maybe somebody, saw the start that Hawkinson had last year, noticed that he was on a top 5 type of trajectory and is willing to give you, probably pull off in some leagues Hawkinson plus a 2 to get you to like Russ.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think this is a team that is obviously set up to win right away, too. You got 2 running backs that are in their prime, one other young running back. Obviously, your wide receivers have more longevity, but they're also in their prime. So either way, I think long-term quarterback outside of Aaron Rodgers is probably like what you're looking at as your biggest need for this team. But I think you're set up in a position that you could just simply address that. If you get Matt Corral at 110, then this problem is solved.
No, I fully agree. So we can move on to the next team here, unless you have any other closing thoughts.
No, good. We can move on to Metzger Chef. And as you guys can see, he has his team here, a couple trades that he wants our advice on. Obviously, his rookie picks as well that he wanted our advice on also. So with his team, you guys can see it on the screen there. I'm not going to read it off, but you can see that he has a number of cornerstone pieces. Again, similar theme to a number of the teams that we've seen so far. He has Hurts, he has Taylor, Jefferson, Devontae Smith, Pat Freiermuth, among others. So let's get into the first trade and, see how he did here. The left side is what he received. Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, Jacoby Myers, and Nyheim Hines in exchange for Noah Fant, Tony Pollard, and Jarvis Landry. Now, in my opinion, he got the 2 best assets in this deal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this right now. I mean, if you want to argue maybe Claypool versus Fant, sure, but I would still take the young 23-year-old. And Freiermuth has a very good argument to be ahead of Fant on his own right. I mean, I think they're at minimum in the same tier of dynasty assets. So
I would personally take Freiermuth over Fant.
Worst case scenario, though, let's just say Fant and Freiermuth canceled each other out. I would personally rather Claypool straight up to Pollard and Landry, and the fact that you also got Myers and Hines out of it. I mean, like, this is a slam dunk.
Yeah, you basically the trade's kind of weird too, because you got like Chase Claypool, who's like the the upside piece. Tony Pollard's the upside piece on the other side of the deal. Jacoby Myers and Jarvis Landry are essentially the same player, so that makes a lot of sense. You just get younger at that position. You have Jonathan Taylor, so I suppose adding Nyheim Hines makes some sense as well. And then Pat Fryermuth and Noah Fant, like you said, they're pretty much in the same tier across the industry. So that makes sense as a cancel out as well.
For sure. And again, we have the second deal here. He ended up receiving the 106 Bateman, Danny Dimes, Michael Carter, and Josh Palmer in exchange for Kamara and McLaurin. And I mean, if we're looking at this straight up, like Bateman and Palmer gets you McLaurin, Bateman and Carter. Like,
I'd say the way I break this down is that Bateman in the 106 gets me Kamara.
Okay, yeah, I mean that is fair. And then the rest of the deal, Dimes, Carter, and Palmer. Yeah, I mean, like I would personally, from a value perspective, prefer your side, but I understand again if somebody's trying to win now, getting after Kamara and McLaurin. So I mean, I think there's a fair trade on both sides. I just personally like the assets you're getting there. You're taking a young stab at Danny Dimes. I mean, maybe he's not good at football, but at least he's got a Konami profile and he's getting a coaching upgrade. Maybe he has, I'm not going to say Josh Allen, but maybe he's a top 20 quarterback by next year after, a quarterback 16 finish this year. That's in the realm of possibilities. And if that ends up happening, if that ends up materializing, which I think is a decent bet to even say, like you're going to be getting way more value for Danny Dimes than you just paid for in this deal.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So his number one question, basically, out of all these trades, he got the 106 in that deal. Obviously, by the looks of it, he looked at his team. He's like, I can't win with this team. I'm going to sell Kamara. I'm going to sell McLaurin, who are both, 26 years old or whatever, and going to be on the decline in the next couple of years. So he sells those guys, gets some young assets like Bateman, the 106, Carter, Palmer, and stuff. So he's thinking with the 106, what direction do you go? And he basically says, I'm guessing Matt Corral would be there if I want to go with the quarterback. Maybe he's his number one quarterback. But at the 106 in a super flex format, I do think Corral is probably likely to be on the board, because I think most casual players are going to take both Hall and Spiller in the top 6, and they're going to take the top 3 wide receivers, and then probably Malik Willis over Corral. So I think there's a good chance that Corral is there at 106.
So, I mean, you kind of just mentioned that would take you to the 107. I do think that Willis and the 2 running backs are going to make their way at some point in the top 5. And if that happens, like there's no way I'm taking Corral over any of the top 3 receivers personally. Like,
no, I don't think so either. But like for us, so far, like kind of how we rank the top of the draft, at least in my opinion, is that I have those top 3 receivers and, these 2 quarterbacks somewhere in that top 5, and then Spiller would be in that mix as well. So if Hall goes, who I don't think is a top 6 overall pick, then somebody's going to fall. And I would just, say whoever falls, whoever it ends up being, Corral to me seems like the likely guy that would fall, because he's, a quarterback. We don't really know what his draft capital is going to be. Obviously, by that time, you will know. If he goes 9th overall to the Washington football team, I highly doubt he falls to 6, so probably go before then. But whatever value falls to you, whether it's Drake London, Treylon Burks, or Garrett Wilson, or it's Isaiah Spiller, or it's Malik Willis or Matt Corral, one of those guys should be on the board for you. And I would just honestly go best player available at that point.
Yeah, I fully agree. Again, in terms of other moves I would make, I mean, looking at the roster, obviously for the most part, you do have younger assets. So, I mean, that's a good sign. The only big question mark here, I mean, but it is a big question mark, is if a quarterback's not the best player available at 106, you are in a little bit of a pickle at the quarterback spot. I mean, that's an understatement of the year, because, I mean, Hurts, Jones, Minshew, and Love isn't going to suffice long term, and obviously you don't have your 2023 or 2024 draft capital to be able to address that. So if you don't get quarterback at the 106, again, we kind of mentioned it with other teams, that 204 could be a prime spot if a Sam Howell goes 25th overall and you can add him to the team while still getting an elite level wide receiver. I think that would be a good play too.
Gusbuster lost in the championship, so he finished 2nd in his league. He has no picks in 2022, so his 111 is not on his roster. And he basically says, where do I go from here? It looks like I kind of need depth for this team. Yeah, so looking at this team overall, this to me just screams tear it down for a couple of reasons. Number one, you only have Russell Wilson, who's a starting quarterback, and he is 32 years old or 31 years old, however old he is. And then your running backs are on the decline. Zeke Elliott, Joe Mixon, Kareem Hunt, even you could lump into that category. The only solid pieces that you have to build around going forward are Metcalf and Jefferson, and Tyreek Hill is your 3rd wide receiver, who is also, 28 years old or however old he is. And then Noah Fant is a young tight end. I guess you could hold on to him. But to me, this just screams try and sell everybody, because you could try and run this back next year with, what you have in house, but you don't have a second quarterback in a super flex league that is going to be a starter. I don't think Taysom Hill is going to start in New Orleans. And even if he did, that's just a very hyper fragile second quarterback to have. So you're just in a tough spot. To me, I would just probably try and rebuild this thing. You don't have to sell everybody at once. Like, don't sell, package Mixon, Elliott, and Tyreek Hill in one trade and try and get 3 firsts for them or something like that. Cause I do see a lot of people do that when they try and rebuild. I would, go to separate owners and see who they're interested. Go and target the win now teams and see if they want Joe Mixon or Tyreek Hill. Specifically, those two have the most value right now. So they would be the guys that I would try and sell.
Yeah, I mean, again, at the end of the day here, if this is me, as you know, Corey, as well, the only players from this team right now that would make its way into the 2022 season for me would be Metcalf, Jefferson, and Fant, to be honest. I mean, I would have everybody else on the block kind of seeing what type of value. Again, if you're in a more casual league, maybe somebody's willing to part with, 2 firsts and a young piece for Joe Mixon because of the year he just had. Maybe somebody's still willing to give a back end first, early second for Ezekiel Elliott, which we both know from the Touch Apex that we've talked about all season for the most part, that he is the most used running back in the entire NFL right now, and it's not even particularly close. I'm pretty sure when we look at it,
he has like 500 more touches on his belt than Derrick Henry even has.
Yeah, that if you can get an early second, late first for that, I mean, you take that all day, because as a Cowboys fan, I mean, I do think that his days are going to be numbered. And then from a wide receiver position, obviously Tyreek Hill is still going to hold a lot of value. Number one weapon for Mahomes, speed demon, one of the best receivers in the NFL. And if you can get multiple firsts for that, because he's still going to be a top 30, top 25 type of startup pick, I mean, you have to gauge the value there. So overall, I mean, the only holdovers I'm keeping here are Metcalf, Jefferson, and Fant. I'm not forced to sell Russ, but if somebody's willing to pay a decent amount for him, I'm willing to sell, and everybody else is just on the block.
Yeah, I would love to be able to just say, if you had your 2022 first, that 111, maybe you earmark it for a quarterback and try and run this thing back, because I think you could do that, hypothetically, and then sell some pieces in season if you sustain some injuries or something. But it's going to be really tough without a second quarterback to be able to win with this team. And at that point, again, maybe you wait until closer to the season to sell some of these pieces, especially Mixon and Hill, when they're going to have the most amount of value and teams are looking around the league. Who's my biggest contenders? Where are my teams weak? If you have 3 or 4 contenders in your league, just be like, hey, Mixon and Tyreek Hill, I'm always willing to trade those guys. They can help push your team over the top. And maybe they'll, closer to the season, they look at the rest of the teams that are competing and they're like, I don't know if I can compete with these guys. I need to send 2 firsts for Tyreek Hill because he rounds out my wide receiver core, whatever the case ends up being. So yeah, Gusbuster, if I were you, I think you got to admit defeat, tear this thing down and rebuild it, because you're in a position right now where outside of Ezekiel Elliott, I think everybody else that you have that's a contending asset still has very good value relative to the market, especially Mixon, Hill, and Russell Wilson. So you should be able to get quite a bit of value for those guys.
For sure. And I'm curious in terms of Ezekiel Elliott's, KTC value in terms of keep
probably like an early second rounder.
It's actually a late first still. So I mean, if
really?
you can get a late first for Zeke, I mean, I'd be willing to do that. You can convince a contender.
Even if you could get like a 2024 first for Zeke, because like somebody
easily.
Like 2 years from now, like they're not even going to be thinking about that if it is a more casual league. So if you can sell Zeke for a first of any kind, then I would absolutely be doing that.
For sure. And getting off Gusbusters Team and getting off Ezekiel Elliott, let's talk about this upcoming event on February 14th and how you can prepare for it. A word from our sponsor over at Manscaped. Hey lads, today's episode is brought to you by our sponsors over at Manscaped, the leaders in male grooming across the globe. With Valentine's Day just around the corner, our sponsors at Manscaped are here with the best tools to get you ready for the special occasion. At the end of the day, the amount of roses and chocolates you bring won't matter if your manly parts are not kept up. Manscaped provides men with the cleanest and most concise trimming experience available on the market. The holidays went by so quickly. Did you shore up your grooming routine with the best tools for the job? The Performance Package 4.0 from Manscaped is just the thing every guy needs in their life to make each and every day just a little more special. The number one product in this package is the Lawnmower 4.0. This electric trimmer is designed to trim hair on loose skin, and get this, the trimmer's advanced skin-safe technology reduces cuts and nicks on your body. It even has a 4000K LED spotlight so you can shave in the dark. Also, did I mention? This thing is waterproof too, baby. You want to do it in the shower, you want to do it, after you wash up. All the power to you. This trimmer is the best on the market, the Lawnmower 4.0. Make sure your grooming experience is not without this elite trimmer. In addition to this trimmer, in addition to the Lawnmower 4.0, this package also includes the Weed Whacker nose and ear hair trimmer to whack all the worst of your weeds. The Weed Whacker is also waterproof and uses a 9,000 RPM motor-powered 360-degree rotary dual blade system. This nose and ear hair trimmer provides proprietary skin-safe technology which helps prevent against said nicks, snags, and tugs in those delicate holes of yours. Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts, their Shed Travel Bag and anti-chafing boxer briefs to keep you comfy everywhere you go. To get this package and more, go to manscaped.com for our exclusive offer over here at the Fancy Stock Exchange of 20% off plus free shipping if you use promo code BUSH at checkout. This Valentine's Day, it's time to join 4 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming, with our exclusive offer as I mentioned. Go to manscaped.com and use promo code BUSH for 20% off plus free shipping. Your lady will thank you for getting the best male grooming experience currently on the market. And if you didn't hear me right, 20% off, free shipping, promo code BUSH. All sums up to the best experience you can have in dealing with those delicates of yours. That's 20% off plus free shipping with promo code BUSH at checkout. Join Cupid and shoot your arrow with Manscaped this Valentine's Day. Again, we appreciate the support for the Fantasy Stock Exchange shown by our friends over at Manscaped and thank them for sponsoring today's video. Back to the video. Okay, so you guys would have seen that ad read, quick plug, got to pay some bills over there, as Corey always mentions. Let's get on to the next team, the next trade, and that's going to be from Ishmael. You'll take it away here.
Yeah, this one's interesting because I don't think either team won this trade. I think it's probably appropriate value. Maybe you lean one side or the other, depending on what you think of the other player. But Travis Etienne was traded, and Ishmael received Travis Etienne in exchange for Jerry Jeudy and 2 second-rounders this year. Now, I don't know where those second-rounders are. If they're early second-rounders, that obviously skews the deal a little bit more, because this year, I think there's going to be a pretty significant drop-off by the mid to late second round of rookie drafts, similar to what we saw last year, right? Once everybody was done taking the Rondell Moores and the, Elijah Moores, Terrace Marshalls, like pre-draft, that's how we kind of viewed the rookie class this past year. I think a similar thing is going to happen once we get to the mid to late second. Once George Pickens and, these guys are off the board, we're looking at, Sky Moores and John Mechie's and stuff. I think that's a little bit, not as good as the early second round type of options that we're going to be looking at. So the fact that, you get Travis Etienne, who we don't exactly know what James Robinson's health situation is going to be. We obviously saw some good signs in regards to Achilles injuries in general from Cam Akers. But Travis Etienne should be set up for a pretty big workload next year. Now, I know everybody's going to be wary of Doug Peterson because he's famous for deploying running back by committees, but first round running back, very good, college profile, especially on paper. And Etienne to me has just more upside in general than what Jerry Jeudy presents. And if those are, mid to late second round picks in 2022, I think this is a win for the Etienne side.
For sure. And again, if I was in this deal getting Etienne, I probably would have wanted an early to mid 3 back to kind of balance it out. But overall, I'm not off of paying this price because I do think obviously we both believe in the talent, the profile that Etienne had. He obviously has an opportunity now with James Robinson tearing his Achilles. You know what? I mean, if it's going to cost Jeudy in 2 seconds, I think I'd be willing to make this deal, especially again, if you're willing to invest obviously in a more young, talented running back asset as opposed to basically the hype we've been living off of Jerry Jeudy since he got drafted. We keep talking about, oh, he's such a good route runner. He's such a good talented player that he hasn't produced, point blank. He hasn't produced. If he has one other season this year where he doesn't produce yet again, his value could freaking plummet.
Yeah, he could be in not Terrace Marshall territory, but that's the type of drop that we could see where, going into this year, we were both high on Jerry Jeudy. I loved Jerry Jeudy. Obviously suffers an unfortunate ankle injury and, kind of brings me back to the Deebo Samuel argument, because Deebo Samuel in his second year, when he had a lot of hype around him, was also dealing with injuries. And then he comes out in his third year and is a top 3 fantasy wide receiver. Could Jerry Jeudy still do that? Sure. But I'm still, a little bit wary of buying into Jerry Jeudy in Dynasty just because he has had opportunities. He's had, the ability to command targets with Courtland Sutton out of the lineup for some of these games and stuff. And he just hasn't produced, point blank period, like Danny said. So I'm more willing to take the upside risk on Travis Etienne, who we haven't seen in the NFL yet, who from the doctors that I follow aren't relatively that concerned about his injury because he's had so much time to recover from it, and because it's, you know, fairly routine from a medical perspective. So yeah, I like the gamble on Travis Etienne. If you could have gotten a third round pick in return on top of Etienne, that probably would have been a bit better. But nonetheless, I think that's a pretty solid move for you.
For sure. So moving off of Ishmael's trade, it was obviously a fun discussion to talk about how the market's going to view Travis Etienne going into the offseason. Well, off of that, we're going to talk about Tyler Browning's team, and he's got his team listed here and a couple potential questions / moves that he's thinking about making. So overall, when looking at this team, what are your first thoughts? And in terms of offering Judy for Hollywood when trading opens, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so you clearly have a very good, you know, nucleus for your team. You have Mahomes, obviously, who's, you know, the quarterback 1, 2, or 3, depending on who you ask in Dynasty. You got Javonte Williams, DeAndre Swift, both, you know, cornerstone running backs that are in my top 5. You know, overall, you have Elijah Mitchell, who obviously gained a lot of value this season. And then at wide receiver, you don't necessarily have any studs, but you go like 6 deep at wide receiver that are, you know, wide receiver 2 types. And if your running backs can be the high end RB1s that we think they can, and you obviously have Mahomes as well, then that can be enough to kind of carry your team forward. It looks like you know, finished about middle of your league this year with the 106, 206, etc. So with this team, I think you're, you know, well set up to be able to just continue to add through the draft. Maybe you want to look with that 206 towards a tight end. Maybe you want to go for like a Trey McBride or something like that. That 106 should probably be earmarked for a wide receiver.
Yep.
Just because I do think you need some high-end wide receiver talent on your roster because it is lacking. So if Garrett Wilson or, you know, Drake London falls to 106, then you could definitely, you know, scoop up that value.
Yes. Also, looking at the doc, this is a one quarterback league too. Forgot to write it on the sheet, but overall, though, this is a one quarterback league. So, looking at this right here, the 106, maybe you can't get a London, but I mean, maybe people are scared off of Jameson Williams' injury, and he somehow falls to you at 106. I think that would be a good pick as well. 206, you mentioned Trey McBride, even in a one quarterback, that's probably about his value there. Maybe you want to look that way. Overall, though, I mean, again, Corey mentioned you got the nucleus here. You got 3 really good young running backs here. The wide receivers obviously need a big time name, but again, overall, I think you're in a good spot. Going to offer Judy for Hollywood. I love this. I have
Yeah,
Hollywood
if you
straight
can
up
get
ranked over
Hollywood Brown
Judy.
for Jerry Jeudy, that is a smash deal. I know, you know, Jerry Jeudy was probably, by most people's opinions, mine included, the better prospect coming out, but we've seen 3 years of Hollywood Brown in the NFL and 2 years of Jerry Jeudy in the NFL. It's really not all that close at this point. Hollywood Brown commanded nearly 150 targets this year without his quarterback for half the games too. So the fact that Hollywood Brown is available for a Jerry Jeudy level asset and not a, you know, Elijah Moore, Devontae
Terry
Smith
McLaurin.
level asset, like he probably should
Yeah.
be valued at, is pretty crazy to me still, that you can still trade hopefuls like Jerry Jeudy for guys that have done it and are still young like Hollywood Brown.
I fully agree. And again, I know a lot of people are going to be hesitant. Oh, he's, you know, this 5'9", 5'10" burner, but no, people like profiling size into player archetype way too much. Like, this is a genuine target hog, and we saw it with Lamar Jackson. Without Lamar Jackson, it did not matter last year. Him and Mark Andrews were the 2 biggest influential pieces of that Ravens passing attack. And I don't expect anything to change. Do I like Rashad Bateman? Do I think he's talented? Absolutely. But there's no sign that we have seen thus far in their respective careers that would point to the fact that Bateman should be ahead of Hollywood. Yet people are kind of treating the market as if he's already supplanted Hollywood.
Exactly. And when you think about this offense in general too, like most of you guys probably won your championships on the back of some of these great offenses this year. The Chargers, the Cowboys, the, you know, the Buccaneers, the, you know, the Bengals, like these offenses that produce multiple fantasy producers. Are we going to pretend at all like, you know, Lamar Jackson being a top 3 quarterback next year, and, you know, J.K. Dobbins being a top 10 running back, and Hollywood Brown being a top 15 wide receiver, and Mark Andrews being the tight end 1 or something isn't possible again next year with how good this offense could be once everybody gets healthy? Like, I think just attaching yourself to a quarterback like Lamar and the Ravens is always a smart idea regardless. And the fact that you can get a 145 target guy for Lamar Jackson in that offense for this price, I think is just a steal.
For sure. And he mentions any other moves and any packages. There's nothing that really jumps out to me right now. Again, just be fluid, just be liquid on the clock. Like, if somebody's willing to make you a deal to move up, or somebody's willing to buy a player on your team, like, always have your ears listening. Because again, that's the one thing in Dynasty that people kind of just get so hard set on. Oh, this is my team. These are the exact positions I need to fill, yada, 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 that they kind of take themselves out of a value range in Dynasty. Again, don't worry about filling your lineup or anything unless it's right as the season starts, because ultimately here that's going to lose you out on potential value deals that somebody may be coming for, a Javonte Williams, somebody may be coming for a Terry McLaurin, somebody may be coming for one of your top end players. Always be receptive, always be willing to make a move. But either way, that's a long-winded spiel, long-winded macro kind of analysis. That's not at your team specifically, but either way, let's get on to the next team. Talk a lot. That's going to be from Dirk's 1992, and I'll let you take it away here.
Yeah, so he sent me 2 teams, but he sent questions about the first one, so I'll just answer that. But he basically wants to know where he should go with the 104 based on his team. So looking at his team, he has, Burrow, Tannehill. This is a super flex league. So he has Burrow, Tannehill, Goff, and Taysom Hill. I think that's, a pretty solid quarterback core there. You have Derrick Henry, you have Cam Akers, James Conner, the top 3 running backs, Cooper Kupp, Deontay Johnson, DeAndre Hopkins, and some other pieces at wide receiver. Kyle Pitts, mainly at tight end with Jonnu Smith there as well. So with the 104 in a super flex league, to me, it stands out pretty clearly that you could add to your wide receiver core or you could add to your running back core. I don't think quarterback is probably the direction I would go with that 104. Although, if Malik Willis gets top 10 draft capital, I don't, think that's a bad idea if he falls to 104. But I'm probably looking at one of these big 3 wide receivers or Isaiah Spiller with that pick.
Yeah, I mean, again, the nucleus of your team here would suggest that with one added piece here, like this could be a legit team that can contend. You got Kupp, you got Henry, you got Akers, you got Deontay Johnson, Hopkins, like you got Pitts, you got Burrow. Like you have a team that has the nucleus to contend. 104, as Corey mentioned, has to be earmarked for best player available. Now, if Malik Willis, as Corey mentioned, gets significant draft capital, if he's there at 104, you could take him. But realistically, if he goes top 10, like he's probably going to be 101. And if that happens, guess what? One of those top 3 receivers that each of us are very, very high on is going to be available to you. And if you can add, a London, a Burks, a Wilson to the team you already have now, like again, Connor should be able to get another Melvin Gordon like role somewhere else. Obviously, Henry and Akers should be your main carriers at running back. And I mean, your wide receivers, they may be old, they may be like depreciating aside from Deontay, but they're going to be able to produce if they're healthy in 2022.
Yeah, and I don't want to discount Isaiah Spiller too, because if he goes, early second round of the Atlanta Falcons or something like that, and he has, a big workload in front of him, I do think he might be worth that 104 as well. But most likely that pick should be probably earmarked for a wide receiver. I believe personally that those 3 wide receivers are probably the best prospects, regardless of position in this draft class, outside of if Malik Willis gets really, really high draft capital, because, it looks like we're trending in that direction based on what I've seen from the Senior Bowl and, in draft media. It seems like after the Senior Bowl, everybody bumped Malik Willis up 10 to 15 spots in their mock draft.
Well, it's pretty simple in regards to Malik Willis. I'm not going to go too long here because we got to finish the video, but it's pretty simple to me with Malik Willis. You got an elite Konami code profile that should get significant draft capital. Maybe, I mean, he's definitely not the prospect that Lance was, but if he finds top 10 draft capital, I mean, the bull case for a Willis would be exactly how we value Lance right now. An elite rushing quarterback with a long leash because of his draft capital invested into him. He doesn't have to be a good real life quarterback. I mean, heck, he could be Jalen Hurts out there for all we know. But again, if he has that type of long-term security, if he has a 5th-year option, if he has top 10 draft capital invested into him, he's going to be a starting quarterback for the next 4 or 5 years. And getting that with the fantasy upside that Willis has, he would be 101 if he goes top 10.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. As much as I love these wide receivers, as much as I love Matt Corral too, I do think if Willis goes top 10, he's going to be hard for me not to rank at 101 or at least like 103 at minimum. So,
yep.
Jorshs, let's move on to his team.
Yep.
He has a number of questions here. He says, what would y'all suggest based on his team? Should I move Eckler for another young back? If so, should I do it before the season or look to make an in-season move? I won last year, and I think I have a good chance to run it back. So looking at his team, I agree that he probably should try and run this league back. And looking at Jorsh's team, obviously he has just a number of cornerstone players, right? With Lamar Jackson. I don't know if this is a super flex league or a 1 quarterback league. He didn't tell us, but just based on how his team is constructed, I'm assuming this is a 1 quarterback league if he was able to win the championship. He has Javonte Williams, who's obviously a cornerstone running back, Jamar Chase, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, and Jalen Waddle, who all of them are in my top 8 dynasty wide receivers.
Crazy. Yeah.
TJ Hawkinson at tight end, who's I think my dynasty tight end like 5 or something right now. So should you move Austin Eckler for a young back? I'll just, we'll start with that first question. Would you be looking to do something like that? Or is this team good enough to compete and you just use Austin Eckler?
I mean, I would, again, I'm always a value accumulator, so I would always be interested in hearing the offers available. But honestly, with the shape of this team, I mean, there's just no sense in moving him unless you're getting a overpay of a package. Like if somebody's coming to you and saying, "Listen, I really want Austin Eckler. I love his pass catching. I value him as a top 5 dynasty asset or top 5 dynasty back. I'm willing to give you Gibson in a first for Eckler in a second." I would do it in that scenario. But again, if somebody's just coming to me and saying, "Yeah, I'll give
Gibson
you
or Dobbins or ETN straight up, you not doing that?
I wouldn't with this team specifically. Now, if I was again face value wise, mediocre team, yeah, I would do it because I would want the longevity. But at this point, just go fucking win your championship again. I mean, you have Eckler, you have Williams, you have I probably the best quartet of wide receivers I think I'll ever see, with literally 4 of the top 8 guys, as Corey mentioned, in our manifesto rankings. And again, Hawkinson, if he's healthy, we know what he's able to produce from both a target standpoint, and who knows, maybe Detroit's offense gets better with an added wide receiver on the outside, or maybe they take Malik Willis at 2. Who knows? I mean, like there's so much potential with this team to be able to run it back that ultimately here, unless I'm forced at hand by an offer I can't refuse, I'm probably just going to keep this team as is.
What about trading Austin Eckler for the injury-prone running backs, Christian McCaffrey or Saquon Barkley? Would you do any of those? Maybe you can get something small on top of them as well.
I'd do McCaffrey. I wouldn't do Barkley.
I think most people would probably trade McCaffrey plus a second rounder for Austin Eckler. Just, at face value, I think most people would probably value Eckler higher than McCaffrey, just because, I mean, we see it all the time. When somebody tweets anything about Christian McCaffrey, the whole comment section is, this guy can't stay healthy. This guy can't stay healthy. It's like, I don't know how many times we're going to have to explain this throughout the entire offseason, but running backs don't stay healthy. That's why they play running back. So
yeah,
either way, funny. That's a separate discussion for a different video. And we will definitely have some real doctors to tell us whether or not that is true later in the offseason. But yeah, I think at this point with this team, you got all these elite wide receivers. You have a great tight end. You have a great quarterback. You have a couple good running backs. Like, just go try and win again.
Yep. No, I fully agree with you here. And I'm glad you mentioned McCaffrey, and then we'll go on to the next team. But I'm glad you mentioned McCaffrey, because literally I remember a few weeks ago I put out a little thread of how McCaffrey, point per game wise, was legitimately a 25 plus PPR point per game back in every single season. Average wise in a season, and every single time he's played in 50+% of snaps. So if he played in 50+% of snaps, he was most likely scoring 25 plus fantasy points for you, which is realistically the ceiling of any single player, except McCaffrey can do that without scoring. McCaffrey can legitimately score 25 PPR points without scoring a goddamn touchdown. And you can't say that about any single other fantasy football asset out there. So the fact that we're discounting this guy because he's injury prone just gives you a buying window. I mean, I think Bean Counter put this out, but we're getting such huge discounts on legitimate fantasy breaking superstars with Lamar Jackson, Christian McCaffrey, and Michael Thomas, that if you're a contender and you're not actively shopping those guys or shopping for those guys, I don't know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I saw it. Last thing, and then we'll move on. But I saw a tweet of somebody that said, "I'm not trading for Lamar Jackson because I don't like Lamar Jackson." That was their rationale, and I was just like, "You don't like Lamar? Like, what don't you like about
fantasy
him? 20
points
plus fantasy points per game? Is that what you don't like about him? Because I mean, we're all hoping that Trey Lance and Jalen Hurts and Justin Fields can be 80% of what Lamar Jackson has been his entire career, because none of them have the ceiling of Lamar Jackson, in my opinion. So let's get off of this. Obviously, we're going to rant about our superstar fantasy assets that are going too cheap. Let's get on to the final team, which is Spicy Hot, staple of the channel. His question basically is, where does he go with his team right now? Because as he puts it, is looking a little bit rough. And he also has a couple trades for us to go through as well. So looking at his team, it is a 14-team super flex. In a 14-teamer, I mean, quarterbacks are, few and far between. Joe Burrow, the only real quarterback asset that he has. He has Saquon Barkley at running back. Again, the only real running back asset he has. Nobody, superstar level at wide receiver. Sutton and Ayuk are, wide receiver 2-3 types in Dynasty. And then Darren Waller, who still should have quite a bit of value despite his age. So looking at his draft capital as well, he has the 102 this year. Looks like he finished second last in this league. And he also has the 202, the 211, 2/3. And then in 2023, he has 3 firsts, mainly due to some of these trades that he made. So I think he's kind of recognized that, you can't win with this team. The nucleus that he had probably mid-season or something like that, he decided to ship off some of these pieces. So let's work through some of these trades. And the first one, I mean, I don't find a human being on earth that doesn't think this is a good trade. But Carson Wentz, and a second in 2023 in exchange for a first. Like anytime you can get first round draft capital for fringe level quarterback play with no job security like Carson Wentz, you got to do it.
Yeah, no, amen. I mean, this is just ridiculous. Give me the first all day. And speaking of the first, you got another first for Josh Jacobs straight up. Like, we think Josh Jacobs is, a decent buy low if you can get it.
I think he's undervalued, but
mid-second value.
Given
But
the state of your team, Josh Jacobs isn't going to be a guy that I want to have on a team like this that you're going to need to rebuild. And not only that, that 2023 first just is going to continue to accumulate value more than Josh Jacobs ever could.
Well, I mean, you project that mid to late. I mean, if you were to tell me that was the 2023 112, like I still would rather that over Josh Jacobs right now, even though I don't mind Josh Jacobs. The fact that you have the upside for it to be, the 105, the 106 or whatever. Again, I'm assuming this mid to late. Otherwise, somebody probably wouldn't make this move for Jacobs. This is a slam dunk no matter where it lands in that top 12 or top 14, obviously with a 14-team league for your league. So overall, really like this deal. I mean, you have no use for the running back production that Jacobs is getting you. You may as well prolong that into a liquid asset that the 2023 first can provide. So anyways, the final deal here, again, similar deal. Harris isn't really going to help you. So you get a second and a third here. Basically, I don't really care about the fourth. I think this is fine. Probably a little bit cheaper than I would have wanted. Like again, if it was too.
I think the value for Damian Harris is probably like an early to mid second round pick. So the fact that you get a second rounder plus you also get an upgrade from a fourth rounder to a third rounder, I think this is probably a good deal for both parties involved. And for your situation specifically, I do like this trade.
I'm just assuming because it's a 14-team league, and if somebody's moving that pick, it's probably going to be later, that it's probably closer to a 3 than it is a 2, which is why I said I'd probably rather have had 2 2s. But either way, I mean, Harris is not going to produce for you. You don't need the running back production. You want to tank your own pick as much as possible. So I don't mind making this move, being savvy and getting that inherent value of realistically tanking your own team to get, a Bryce Young or a CJ Stroud to really help out that quarterback core. Aside from that, I mean, the only players that I'm really stuck to on this team that I'd be willing to just keep overall, like Burrow and Ayuk, and again, Saquon's on the block, Penny's on the block, Waller's on the block. Hey, first come, first serve. If you guys want to make an offer, go ahead, make offers for me. I'm collecting as much future assets as possible. And heck, another move I'd be willing to consider, Keep Trade Cut currently has Joe Burrow above Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray. If you can go out to the Lamar Jackson owner, maybe he's upset. Lamar was dealing with the illnesses last year, and you're able to flip Burrow for Lamar. You could probably even get Lamar plus for Burrow right now. That's a type of savvy move. Again, do you have to make that move? No, but the best dynasty managers are able to take assets that are on the high and being able to flip them into assets that have a higher ceiling that aren't at their peak value. And I think Burrow for Lamar is a prime example because, again, on Keep Trade Cut, Burrow is currently ranked ahead of Lamar, which they're the same age. I don't think people realize that. They are literally
and not only that, but Joe Burrow averages 7.4 rushing yards per game. As much as I think Joe Burrow can run, he doesn't actually run that much. Like he probably could run a lot more than he does. And Lamar Jackson averages 7.4 rushing yards per carry pretty much. So like, it's not really a pretty fair comparison in my opinion. I think like Lamar is just still significantly above Burrow for me from a fantasy perspective. Real life NFL perspective, sure, you want to say Burrow's a better quarterback, makes sense. But from fantasy, we value rushing quarterbacks. And I do think even if you didn't want to sell Burrow for another quarterback, you could just sell him for like 2 2023 first and a 2024 first if you wanted to as well. That is the thing that I'd be looking to do if I had this team, is look for 2024 picks also, because people aren't going to value them at all, right? Like they're 2024. They're so far away. You could probably get a 2024 first and, a young piece or something for Saquon Barkley. And if that's all you can get for him in season or at the time right now, like I'm still okay doing that deal, because like Saquon Barkley is kind of out of place on this team. And once his value kind of starts to go up again, maybe you have to wait until the season for that to happen. I'm looking to sell him immediately.
Well, yeah, anytime he shows any type of glimpse, like you use that as your selling window because you don't need that production. Same thing with Waller. Again, people are lower on Waller right now because, an injury-riddled year, Hunter Renfro's the guy, all this fucking fugazi that people are going to put on the Twitter web over these next few months. If Waller comes out the first few games of 2022 and has, 25 targets in the first 3 games, I'd use that as a selling window. I'd be like, listen, if you're a contender and you need top end tight end production, I'll take
your 2024 first and second or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would do that in a heartbeat. So overall, again, keep strong with this team. Keep at it. Keep trying to look for value.
This is going to be a long one. This isn't going to be quick. Like 2024 season is the first point in time that you can be like, okay, can I compete yet? Like, because you're not going to be close to competing in 2023. Not going to be close to competing in 2024, most likely either. So I'm just looking to rebuild this thing for the long haul, catch as much draft capital as I possibly can. If somebody wants your 102 this year to come up and get a Breece Hall or somebody or a Malik Willis or something, sell it for 2020. If somebody's willing to give you a 2023 and a 2024 first for your 102 this year, sell it.
Yep. No, I agree. And as alluring as, like, again, if Malik Willis goes to Detroit, he's probably going to be the 101 anyways. But if he was eyeing you in the face at 102, you could probably almost sell that pick for, again, 2 first plus, as you mentioned, because at the end of the day here, I mean, Malik Willis is probably going to be a top 10 to 12 quarterback asset in Dynasty if he goes with that type of draft capital.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. So again, like, you're not one player away here. Just keep taking value, keep turning one really good piece and keep relaying those liquid assets for the future. Build up 2023, 2024, which, by the way, nobody's going to catch steam on the 2024 class yet. From what I saw with some of those true freshman season, talk about Travion Henderson, talk about Donovan Edwards, talk about, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with Quinn Ewers, but there's, and obviously Caleb Williams, like, there's so much top end talent in that class, like, genuinely speaking. And again, Xavier Worthy's another prime example, but either way, I can talk about a class for days.
I hope Quinn Ewers is good, man. I need Texas to be back.
Yeah, no, literally, if he is good and he's got the mullet, I mean, hey, that's gonna be a little stylistic brand thing for Texas. But either way,
yeah, for sure.
We went long-winded, 50 minutes in, to say, if you guys enjoy this video, enjoy Dynasty Decisions, as always, we're going to try to put these out once per week. Maybe we get to the point where you guys love it so much we can make it a twice per week thing, depending on the number of submissions. Make sure you smash a like down below. Again, hit that subscribe button on the road to 10K. Any other closing thoughts, or should we head the heck out of here?
No other closing thoughts. As you guys have kind of seen it go across the bottom of the screen this whole time, Dynasty rankings available at Patreon, as well as player cards and, all the Dynasty related stuff that you could ask for, databases on all these prospects and stuff. So that is available, patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange, only $10 a month. You'll get access to our Dynasty Decisions, priority. So you'll be able to have your questions read right away and all that good stuff. And all the other benefits are listed there. So if you want to check that out, if you're interested in supporting us, you can go ahead and do that. Patreon.com/fantasy stock exchange. Like, comment, subscribe if you guys enjoyed. Peace out. We'll talk to you soon.